So although one of the places that I come to you from is the White House, yes, that one, the opinions in this talk are not necessarily those of the administration, but they are my observations from working with government for many years at lots of different levels. And also, though Jared touted my work on designing for delight, I'm not going to talk about that either, because while I am on a long-term path to moving the government to a joyous place, these days we're barely meeting basic expectations. In the beginning, there was a form. It's just 2 fields and a button. This is a super simple form, and yet it may be the greatest example of a lack of humanity in IT. Authentication probably is the most despised form in software. If you come to a government website, the kinds of sites that I work on, and try to do anything, this is likely to be one of the first things that you encounter. It says, prove to us you are who you say you are. Now, on average, users encounter a form just like this one about 25 times just in their regular working day across all of the applications that they interact with. So this tiny little cutie little form, 2 fields and a button, seems really innocent. After all, it's the tiniest form ever. Now, imagine this scenario. You've never had health insurance before. I know this is uncivilized. But try to go with me for a minute. You've never had health insurance before, and this means that if you ever go to a doctor, you're either paying out of pocket or you're in an emergency room or an urgent care clinic. And now, for the first time ever, you have a chance to get health insurance because your government is going to help you pay for it. You go to a website, and the first thing you encounter, now remember, you've never been there before, the first thing you encounter is a form asking you for a username and a password. You haven't seen any offerings, you have no idea what the insurance looks like that is on this site. Just this form, create a username and a password. Authentication is a serious problem for users. It is a major obstacle to all of the things that you want to accomplish. It is more than a speed bump on all those roadmaps that you make. It is often the first thing people encounter when they come to your product or your service, and it is almost never a pleasant experience. Think about it. Username selection, bizarre, arcane, seemingly random password requirements, and then remembering those passwords, dealing with security challenge questions. I have yet to understand how it is that challenge questions actually work to challenge anything except the user who's trying to get into an account they already own. Multi-factor authentication is more and more frequent now, but it is not easy to use. All the frequent password changes, and all of those accounts that you have that you use a couple of times a year, but the password changes every 30 or 60 days. Any system that needs users to identify themselves has authentication problems. So, what happens when authentication breaks? We actually saw this in the US government. This happened to 2.8 million people the day Healthcare.gov launched in 2013. In spite of the system outages, though, 500,000 people actually signed up and created accounts in the first week. And before the end of the enrollment period, the first year, 8 million people used Healthcare's version of that seemingly innocent form to actually sign up for health insurance through the exchange. But authentication is a repeated problem across all of the services, all of the interactions that users have with their government. For example, at the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, we have an equivalent. Actually, we have a bunch of equivalents because we make you do crazy things. For example, you have to create an account to apply for a benefit, and then you have to sign up separately to get notifications about where your application is in the process. So if you've ever applied for a student visa or a work visa in the US, you've seen this, but there are things like this sprinkled across the entire service from Citizenship and Immigration Service, and it's not alone. Practically every service that the federal government delivers has similar problems because we've made it hard for ourselves. We've made it hard for ourselves to deliver service by forgetting that we're actually in the service business and that service is a designed experience, whether you are intentional or not. In fact, every service government provides has a variation of this thing, of authentication. And so when you pay your taxes or you just want to check on where your refund is, you have one of these. When you sign up for a Social Security number, and eventually when you collect retirement benefits. If you have ever served in the military and you're leaving military service, you leave one set of systems and join another set of systems. Now, the user's problems with authentication absolutely need to be solved. Fixing authentication seems like a very small thing, but I'm going to guess that none of you in this room is actually working on it. It's a small thing, but it has enormous effects. So we did that for Healthcare.gov. When it launched, authentication actually caused, the system behind authentication actually caused 70% of all of the system outages. Now, that system cost $200 million to build and cost $70 million a year to maintain. It was built by a huge contracting company with hundreds of engineers and developers. So you would think, for that kind of money, that we would have a really superb experience, and the system would be up all the time. But it wasn't. We replaced that system with a system that cost $40 million to make and $4 million a year to maintain. The error rate dropped to 0 point something, which means that it threw 10 errors in the first month, not 10%. And the response time, which used to be 20 seconds, is now down to 20 milliseconds. The new system took I'll tell the guys, thank you. The new system took 8 developers less than a year to replace the old system using agile methods and to deliver a far, far better experience for users. And now, as we're about to start the third open enrollment period for Healthcare.gov, 16 million people have insurance through the exchanges, through these new programs, many of whom have never had it before. So we're not just talking about authentication here. Fixing this seemingly small IT thing changed people's lives in dramatic ways. Who would have thought that fixing an authentication problem was actually a public health problem? Authentication is actually just one tiny component of many small systems that make up very large systems. You know this. Take something like applying for citizenship. When you do that, you touch the ingesting system. These pull the data from the forms. The content management system for supporting the supporting documentation that you send in. The scheduling system for biometrics appointments for applicants. The file warehousing system. All of the background checking, fraud, criminality systems, and the terrorist lists. Customs systems for entry and exit data. Of course, case management systems, reporting, and customer support, because there's a lot of that, because all of those other things are broken. And a whole bunch of systems that, if I told you about them, I'd have to kill you. Generally, these systems were built by different companies, and their components came from different teams within those companies, with very little thought about the possibility that there might be other systems out there in the government in place that already do those things. Each team just simply wrote new code to fulfill a contract. They didn't think much at all about the user experience. Each one of these components presents a different set of experience problems, both for the person who's applying and for the person who is inside making the decisions about whether this person gets a benefit. Right now, most of those problems are on the back end. They are not so much about UI issues. When you can't even get to the part of the UI that you need to get a thing done because of reliability problems or interoperability problems, interaction design just pales by comparison. Making better experiences means that we need to fix the back end. But right now, up until this point, we approach all of systems development as if each large system were a battleship. Everything is structured in government around exactly this kind of project. The ship is built as a huge, single, isolated unit, completely custom-tailored in every way with bespoke parts, because you can't actually have an assembly line for a thing like this. There isn't money, and there isn't space. And then, when the ship is built, you just put it out to sea, just like that. Now, ships float, but large systems, when built like battleships, do not. We hope that it floats, but often it sinks, sometimes before it's even launched. So this 20th century notion that it's less risky if we define the entire system up front to know everything and then to make it, well, clearly this is not played out in the way that anyone would want it to play out. Throughout the US government, this is probably true in the UK government and other governments across the Western world, there are stories of large systems that took 2 or 3 years to define, 5 to 7 years to develop, hundreds of millions of dollars, only to throw it away at the end after being in place for maybe a couple of years and really trying to make it work, because it was actually worse in some way, at least one way, than whatever people had used before. And so this creates this approach. Define big up front, design big up front, and then make it, not learning along the way. This actually creates a lot more problems for users, not fewer problems. And this is true both for the public-facing users and for the internal-facing users. So here's the crazy thing, I think, about this, is that an Iowa-class battleship costs about $100 million to build. For the cost of 800 battleships, we get thousands of systems that serve every aspect of government. According to the US Government Accountability Office, the US federal agencies in total spend $80 billion every year on IT. For that kind of money, we should have the best user experiences on the planet, delivering amazing service continuously. But anybody who's interacted with our government knows that this is just not true. So, with the passionate and talented tech professionals already inside government, inside agencies, many of whom have tried to fix this for years, our mission is to fix the bespoke systems and rebuild all of it. Rebuild these systems with smarter, reusable components, replace many of them with modern options. But we're going to do this piece by piece. Because huge scale, it turns out, is really about breaking things into very small pieces. Instead of battleships, you can think about this more in terms of Lego blocks. So Lego blocks come in specific shapes and sizes, but you can make different things out of the same blocks. Some pieces are tiny, some pieces are larger, but they're all interlocking in the same ways. So government creates value by breaking things into small pieces and then interlocking them, basically, with APIs. In the build once, use often approach, you get a lot more use out of any one component. I think this is a 21st century model. Using reusable components, this is going to generate huge, huge value for all of the federal government, for each of the agencies. And this creates an engine for efficiency across the agencies at a hugely lower cost. So, an example of this is my favorite, the authentication system. Authentication is definitely a system that once it's built, it can be reused multiple times by lots of different government systems. And the same could be true for any number of other applications where there are similar functions agency to agency. So for example, when you look at things like Citizenship and Immigration Service and the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Social Security Administration, there are parallel processes. Somebody applies for something. Somebody files a claim. Somebody makes an appeal. So great value can come from that kind of cross-agency service development, making open source within the government, and sharing platforms. So I've been working with governments large and small for about 15 years. And I always feel like when I walk through the door of that City Hall or now federal offices, like I do almost every day now, that I arrive from the future. And the future brings with it a new truth, and that is that IT is not just a thing that supports the administration of government. It's not only about support. In fact, government is actually in the business of building and maintaining systems for service delivery. Every service is a product. Citizens, government employees, and anybody else who interacts with this body, well, they get value from the government and the services that it delivers. So if we want to do a better job of delivering the service, we just need to deliver better small things. That's the theory, which, when they're combined, make better overall systems. This approach, in turn, solves uploads, this approach solves loads of problems upstream and downstream. And it delivers a better experience for users, for customers, for applicants, for members, for all of the real people who are out there in the world who want these services. So, when immigration officers spend less time struggling with the tools and the systems that they use, not only is that a better experience for the immigration officer, it ultimately leads to a better experience for the immigrant. When claims processing is easier in the Department of Veterans Affairs, backlogs disappear. Call center costs go down, and health in the people who have served our country actually improves. When we build case management systems using smarter notification systems that help people know where their claims are or where their tax refunds are or whether they're actually going to get the benefit that they've applied for, call center costs, again, go down. More workers get to give good news versus bad news or asking for more information because some system didn't tell them that they needed a thing. And requesters just have a better experience with the government. So now, the private sector, to be fair, is only just figuring all this out itself. So rather than building one massive battleship of a system to support the implementation of legislation, which is largely how we've approached this up until now, government is shifting to a new approach. We're delivering lots of little things continuously. And so in the 21st century, where I come from, and I would like to be every day, better services must be constantly updated and improved. This is not unique to government. You're all talking about continuous deployment. You're all talking about continuous improvement. But continuous delivery really requires working in small pieces. Continuous delivery is about constantly increasing the value of the service by solving customers' problems. And the way that government delivers value is through continuous digital and information technology-based services. A flip of the way we've been thinking about it. So the time is really right to redesign how systems in government are built. No more sinking battleships. To make a better citizen experience, we actually need to address the system architecture problems we've created over the decades of building software as if it was battleships. Now, the digital service that I work for in the United States is really all about delivering a better experience for constituents, and right now, most of that experience comes from the back-end systems. Things that have historically been seen as hardcore engineering problems are actually essential to delivering great experiences. Things like reliability and performance. Response times, accessibility, usability, and now I am in deep trouble. Let's try that one more time. Things that have historically been seen as hardcore engineering problems are essential to delivering great experiences. Reliability, performance, response time, security, compatibility, maintainability, interoperability, these are just no longer only engineering problems. These are essential parts of redesigning the citizen experience. The back end has as much, if not more, effect on the experience that people have interacting with their government as information architecture, interaction design, visual design, usability, and accessibility. This is a lot more than just pasting on a front end with a beautiful interface to a crappy back end. You can't put lipstick on this pig. Redesigning the citizen experience happens at every layer of the system. So reusable open source components make development and service delivery faster, smarter, and more reliable. So I'm excited about the direction that we're going in. So the UK's government digital service, the United States digital service, and a whole bunch of others like our teams are helping citizens around the world get better value out of their governments. one authentication system at a time. If this was meaningful to you in any way, please take a year or two to do civil service. We need you badly. It's the biggest startup you'll ever join. Sign up to work for the government digital service and redesign the citizen experience yourself. If you're not a Brit, find the digital service near you. They're cropping up in virtually every country in Europe and South America and a couple of places in Asia. It's really exciting. So, thank you.